I'm Denver Penner. I was born in Belize, Central America, just south of the Mexican border. My parents were missionaries doing economic work in different places. So growing up, I got to know the Latin American countries, lived in Bolivia for a while, lived in Mexico for a while, traveled with my family at that time. And I really just had a heart for poor people. Remember, I was 17 years old when I felt that calling and made that commitment to God. And I said, Lord, I'm going to use my life, I'm going to invest my life, I'm going to rescue kids. That's what I'm going to do with my life. Got married to my wife, wonderful woman, Tina. We lived in Canada for 10 years. We have 4 of our own kids. We arrived here at the end of 2008. My wife and our children moved to Mexico. It was right during the time when the drug war started up. The height of the drug war was right around 2010. Juarez was probably the worst. Homicide through the roof. Official reports put us at over 8,000 children, street children, that are out on the street without a home. Poverty, prostitution, cartel activity. A lot of these kids joined the cartels. The cartels was the only option they had to join, and just death rampant everywhere. And finally one day we decided, look, it is time to get in. We prayed about it a lot. We see it on the news, but what should we do about it? So we started working with different orphanages. Helped one orphanage here, helped another orphanage there, but we soon realized that what was needed was real administration, was real vision and investment and strategy. Because you can work with love, you can show a lot of love, but if you don't have the whole package to it, then you don't really make a big impact in our community. You can help a child here, help a child there. That's where we started getting involved. In 2014, there was an orphanage that had a few kids, and it was failing. The leader ended up in fraud, and so it was failing, and a group came and asked us to take it over. They eventually handed it all over to us, and we started with 13 children. Eventually some of those were taken away, and we were left with six children. That's what we were left with. So 2014, we were registered. Vida 180 became a registered entity and nonprofit organization. But anyway, that's how we started. In June 2015, we opened that new house that had 48, 50 beds to start with. We had 16 kids. It felt like a waste. I almost felt ashamed in front of people that came by. You built such a big house and you got 16 kids. Well, we knew there was much to be done, and we didn't know how fast it would grow, but we had enough room for 50 kids. In December of that year, 2015, and so I come here and I see that the kids are home. I said, why aren't the kids in school? And she said, well, one of the girls from the community had come to school, not from the orphanage, but from the community, had come to school and had lice in her hair. So the teacher had said, oh, lice, that must come from the orphanage. And she sent all the kids from the orphanage home. Our kids in the orphanage, they shower more than I do. We're clean here, we're excellent. And just because it's an orphanage, they had to go home. That's the day we decided we have to have our own school, because we're not giving them any dignity if that's what they're looked upon. And so in July of 2016, we opened our own school. That's been the best decision we ever made. I ended up, saying, we want to get results. We want to make a difference. We want to see every child off the streets, not just a child here, a child there. We want to make that difference. A lot of different orphanages, we saw that children were rescued, but when they turned 16, 17, they'd be back out on the streets. And the same process would happen over. So many children that were in an orphanage had a home, but after 16, 17, they were among the street kids again. And they were that same cycle again, where kids would have kids. In the city of Cuauhtémoc, we're a city of just over 100,000 people. And the latest statistics that we've had in the last month is that we have more than 20 children born every day from girls that are between the ages of 13 and 15, under the age of 18. So we decided what we would do is we would invest in these children like we did in our own. Like we felt that's what God called us to do. Not just a home, a roof over their heads, and food to eat, but how do we treat our own children? Well, they get taught values, they get taught character, they get a family to live in. Then when they grow up, all right, how do we help them get their job? How do we help them get connected in church, in a community, and all that? So our strategy was not going to be to rescue the poor children, but more, how do we form leaders? We have the school, we have the English program, music lessons, we have dance lessons. All of our kids when the kids get here once a year, every child that has not been through swimming training will get 6 weeks of swimming training. So all our children that have been here more than 1 year and know how to swim. Just basic skills you need in life. So our barnyard, our shop, soccer, all these programs are all part of the program to rescue the child from their bad habits, from their past, to restore it into a family, friends, coaches, teachers, parents, into equipping them to be leaders. So it's not just the orphanage, it's all these programs have to work together. Church is a big deal, where they get to be involved in church. A lot of our teenagers get to be Sunday school teachers, they get to be in the worship team, get to work with youth and so on. So when they get to be part of that, that's the process of rescuing, restoring, and then equipping this child. Rather than go look for donors, we look for investors. We ourselves became investors. Because as a donor, you give money away, right? And don't get me wrong, we appreciate donors, but we looked at it different. Look, we are investing and we're expecting a return. We're not expecting a financial return, but we are actually expecting a return on our investment. We want to invest in these lives. We want to give them the opportunity. We want to form leaders. We want the cycle to change, the cycle of corruption and destruction to go on the reverse, where we invest in them, where they start investing in others. And you'll notice that when you come here, you will see the kids. You'll ask them what they want to do. A lot of them say, I want to work at Vida 180 when I grow up. I want to help rescue kids. I want to be a business person. I want to be a pastor. I want to be a leader. And so this ended up being more that approach. We're investing and we're expecting a return. We're expecting a difference to be made in our state. So what we're expecting is, as these kids grow up, there will be family units. There will be marriages, good marriages. There will be great families. That chain will be broken. The corruption will be broken. 100 years, 200, 300 years from now, there will be a whole different path they've taken. This will make a difference in our community. We're not talking about now, we're talking about an investment in our country, in our society, in our churches. We're talking about turning this thing around, one life at a time. That's why we call it Vida 180. One day, me sitting together with a couple business people and discussing this, and then saying, okay, so how is it that Oxo's a convenience store in our area. There were no Oxos in our area, in the Cotemoc area, about 6 years ago. One day they came in, and in less than 3 years they had like 20 of these convenience stores. Well, they sell coffee too. So what do you see? Our whole culture, everything changed. Everybody would come to work with an Oxo coffee in their hand. How can a business come and change our culture so drastically, so fast? Well, and we were talking about that. So they can, they sit together and they have vision. So that's what the V stands for. They have vision, they have investment, and they have strategy, or what we call direction. So the VID. Orphanages, what we saw in a lot of orphanages, they're people with a good heart. They have love, amor. That's where the A comes from. So what if we would connect what the people who want to help the kids, the love they have, if we would connect that with what the business world has, a vision, investment, and direction, and amor, which is love. That's where we came up with the word vida. That also stands for life, and means life in Spanish. So life 180 degrees. How? With vision, investment, direction, and love. That's how we're going to change it. And that's the results we see. So we have a program which we call careers. When they turn 16, the kids are all allowed to start working at least 1 day a week. When they're 17, then we allow them to work more. With the idea that when they're 18, they'll have a full-time job. So we have right now, we have 11 children working already. We have one of them works in Microtel, one in Pizzeria La Sierra, a K&M restaurant. There's farm hands, there's cleaning, there's different roles that they play. And so we train them on how to use their cell phones, how to be proper workers in the workplace, how to be the kind of worker that bosses will like to work with, how to produce, the character of honesty. I mean, these kids come off the street. How did they live before? Stealing, a lot of that was stealing, but yet when they come through here, they will go out and be productive. It's hard for me to believe, it's hard for me to grasp how quickly they grasp these values that we're trying to teach them. The other day, just a couple of weeks ago, I called up every single one of the employers that is employing our kids that are 16 years old and older. And I asked them, how do our kids compare to your average workers? And I kid you not, each and every one of them said that our kids were actually at a level above average with their adults. They weren't on their cell phones all the time. They had structure in their lives. They knew when break time was. They worked, they had a great attitude. And that was a result of us taking them in and showing them characters and teaching them. And look, these kids were on the streets just a couple years ago. Now they are from the best employees out there. So worship leaders, musicians, all that stuff. You know what? There is so much talent hidden. Now sometimes I go in the back streets. I'll sometimes just go the poorest parts of town. I'll just drive through there and I'll see some of these poor little kids, just completely dirty, beggars. And I look in their eyes and I think, you know, that child could be one of our worship leaders, because that's where they come from. That's where they come from. The talent is all there. Like, God's got a calling on each one of their lives, but not on just those that are here. The same calling that is on theirs is on the 8,000 kids that are still out on the streets. So raising up leaders is really what we're doing. I remember one time we had to deal with that issue because, you know, raising up leaders, sending them to youth camp, allowing them to go to music training, allowing them to train for jobs and stuff like that, that's costly. And so I had somebody mention to me, well, you shouldn't spend that much money, because for the price it costs you to train them up like this, you could rescue 10 more children. I said, well, I'm a farmer and I farm onions, so the first week when the onions are small, they cost very little to maintain. But the last 3 weeks when they're making that fruit, when they're making the onion bulb, we put in a lot of fertilizer, a lot of water, and we've spent almost 10 times as much in 1 week on 1 acre of onions as we do in the first week. So it would be ridiculous for a worker to come by and say, well, for all this money, you could plant more onions rather than finishing out these onions. No, that's when the fruit comes. That's when the result comes. So we had to change our focus. Rather than saying we rescue kids and hopefully they become leaders, no, we raise up leaders and we rescue as many kids as what we can raise up leaders. So that has become our focus, to raise up leaders, because that truly will be the change. That will be the change that we see in Mexico. I can only imagine what it will look like in a couple of years when we have hundreds of these kids and they're out there being raised up as leaders, godly men and women in all areas of society, in all kinds of jobs, all kinds of leadership positions. That investment, it's going to bring big profit. I bet this is the best investment you can ever make. So what's our plan going forward? We are full. We have 1 acre. I would never have guessed. I would never have believed that you could put a barnyard, you could put a school, you could house about 8 staff on site, have 110 kids, everything on 1 acre. Well, it's well designed. It's very well designed, and it's possible, especially since there's a park beside here, but it is too small. We have started purchasing land. We have an agreement on that land, 25 acres. We've got a plan for that land where we can build a school for 600 kids, baseball field, soccer field, a barnyard area, garden area, greenhouse area, a shop area, and then orphanages for another 400 children there. Also with a development attached to it, a private development where we plan to build small houses that we will finance to or the young people when they come out, that they have a place to live. And so finally I realized, look, this is what we do. This is our calling. This is what we're here on this earth for. This is the best return on our investments. We're best bang for our buck. We exchange earthly wealth for heavenly wealth. We invest long term. You know, you realize that the long term investments usually have better returns on investment. So I like to do long-term investment. Well, this is a long-term investment, 100, 200, 300 years, and guess what? The profits are secure. They are for eternity. So no more setting goals, let's do 1,000 kids. You know, just that commitment till every last kid is off the street. Every child made in the image of God has a home. Together, we are the hands and feet of Jesus. We are the ones that will rescue these. And if we don't, you know, it's so simple to sit at home and talk about it. But it's quite a different deal to actually go out and do it. I'm in. I'm totally in for life.